Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this morning? We've got somebody watching here called Teddy Wixon, who's watching all the way, say all the way, from Boston, Massachusetts, in the United States of America. Good morning to you, Teddy Wixon. That sounds like a long way away. But we've also got somebody here called Jeverton or Geverton Tom, who is watching all the way from Brazil, and he has just said Demolidora Supera. I don't know. I don't know if that's a company, whether that's a welcome, a greeting. I don't know. But good morning to Brazil. Good morning to America. Good morning, one and all. Good morning in particular to Dan Kahn, who was here at some ungodly hour this morning. Peter McKenna is here as well, as far as I know. I think, let's have a look. Just rattling through the chat here. I know Dan's here. Gary Muirhead is here as well. We've got a question of the day. It's kind of from Gary. I've taken one of his and I've modified it slightly. We'll get to that in just a moment. Who else do we have here? Mark Whiting is in the house, as is Jim Turner. Good morning to you, one and all. Hope you're all fit and well. Loads to tell you about today. And we're going to start with, let me share my screen. I'm going to start with this one. I don't know how well you can see that. Let me see if I can move it about a bit. Yes. Full force Home Office crackdown sees building sites raided and Indian workers arrested. Those of you that have been watching with interest the ICE raids going on in America and thinking, glad that will never happen here. Well, it has. It has. A nationwide crackdown targets construction sites as migrants suspected of working illegally. According to this report, which is in the Daily Express, a Home Office crackdown on illegal workers in the UK saw 20 Indian construction builders arrested. The government has ramped up its efforts to find migrants who are working here illegally, targeting certain industries suspected of employing those not eligible to work. Construction sites are the latest focus following a hone-in of migrants working as delivery drivers. So, yeah. According to this, construction sites thought to be a hotspot for illegal workers due to the cash in hand nature of the job. This follows a West Midlands operation last month on Smethwick High Street after receiving a tip-off that construction sites had illegal employees. Good luck with searching your way through all of that, Home Office, because we've got a lot of migrant workers working in this industry. Now, I'm going to take that away. There you are. Now, good morning to Garvin, who's just joined us from Most of Diggers as well. That's one thing that I need to tell you about, and probably just as importantly, when I can find it on my screen, here we go. There. Now, it's something we've discussed before. You will remember the Competition and Markets Authority back in March 2022 hit the UK demolition industry, or 10 members thereof, with fines totalling 60 million quid. And those fines were turnover based. So when the CMA announced that it was looking into the house building sector, I think all of us just went, imagine the size of the fines. Well, it's not confirmed. It's not confirmed, but it seems like the house building sector of the business has possibly found a way around things. Gary, you're absolutely right. I'm just about to go through that. I also heard on the radio this morning, house builders are handing over £100 million due to the CMA investigation. This is the take on it from a Construction Inquirer. 7 house builders have offered to pay a total. Now, bear in mind, it does say offered. Okay, it's an important distinction. Offered to pay a total of £100 million following an investigation by the Competition and Markets Authority. The watchdog launched a probe in February 2024 after uncovering evidence that some house builders may be sharing details with their competitors about sales, including pricing, number of property viewings, incentives offered to buyers, and so on. And the 7 companies included Barrett Redrow, Bellway, Barclay Group, Bloor Homes, Persimmon, Taylor Wimpey, and Vistry. All of those have now decided to get themselves together and offer to pay 100 million quid. And apparently that will go towards affordable housing programs. Now, I can't show you this on the screen because I've had it in a different way, but I've had a press release this morning from the CMA themselves, and the headline is "Affordable Housing Set to Benefit from £100 million Following the CMA Probe." Now, there is no suggestion that this has been accepted. In actual fact, the CMA is going to be consulting on this until the 24th of July. But £100 million, I can't help but think that the house building sector, or those 7 companies in particular, are going to get off mighty light if the CMA decides that's enough. Now, in fairness to the CMA, this would be their biggest ever win, I guess. But does this seem fair? Bearing in mind, I'm doing this off the top of my head, Keltbray will find ultimately 18 million quid for their part, again, in turnover linked. Erith, I think, was 16 million or 16.5 million in turnover linked. And yet here we are, we've got some of the biggest names in the industry, Persimmon, Taylor Wimpey, Vistry, and people like that. It looks like they might get away with 100 million between them. What are your feelings? What do you reckon on that, people? I'm not entirely comfortable with it, but as I say, it's not done and dusted as yet. That is now under consultation, so we'll see how all that pans out. We'll be keeping a very close watch on it indeed. Ken Hatter has arrived. Ken Hatter reckons it's hot down in sunny Wales. I'm just trying to find Ken's button here. Hang on a minute. There we are. That's the one. Peter says, I'm here, was on the toilet cutting down some trees. I'd rather not know about that. Chris Ford is here as well. Morning, Chris. Good morning, gang. Better late than never, he says. And there's Dan Cullen saying, morning, team. Yes, Kent, that was precisely my thought when I saw that from the CMA this morning. Money talks. It is a bit like the American judicial system. If you've got enough money, you can afford the best lawyers. If you can afford the best lawyers, then frankly, you can get away with pretty much anything. P. Diddy, looking at you right now. He watches this all the time. But between freak parties, whatever one of those is. Anyway, people, that pretty much does the intro to the show. It is time to roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road. So, having figured out how to get things back in order again, which I was struggling with yesterday, I can do it properly now. So here we go. We're going to go back to this. Dan Cullen says he's still number one with the Crown. This is a thing on YouTube, apparently. Who the hell knows? Dan's got his purple head again. Yeah, apparently he has. This is the one that stood out for me. Nigel Williams. Morning, Nigel. Says, gotta love buying your way out of a scandal that is defrauding home buyers. And therein lies my issue with the CMA press release. It's like they've won £100 million for us poor home buyers. We're going to benefit to the tune of £100 million. How much did we lose out on? My guess, bit more than £100 million. Bit more than that. Jim Turner says, can't blame the house builders for not starting a race to the bottom. Blame the government for not giving SME builders a chance to build more easily. Then the big companies would have to be competitive. Would they? Is that not the purpose of information sharing and cartel type behavior? Is that not what it's all about? Yes, I have just posted our question today. I'll come back to it in a minute, but it is Wednesday, the 9th of July. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming. In today's show, keep on trucking, how Liebherr keeps the wheels turning on its splendid TA230 articulated hauler. We're going to be rebuilding the Roya Valley by embracing technology. It's a good one, that is. Is this Hyundai wheel loader the perfect production machine? Well, you'll be able to have a look at that. And the tiny robot with the big brain. Plus, in my morning monologue today, construction's house of cards. Teddy Wixon has just said they better not investigate the bonding business in the US for demolition. I don't know how aware you are, Teddy, but we had an investigation here in the UK into bid rigging and collusion, £60 million. So probably $80 million in fines back in March 2022. Yeah. Right, okay, where are we? Yes, Construction's House of Cards. That's my morning monologue. No mystery machine today, so I'm going to very quickly remind you of our question of the day, which looks like this. Now, if you were here yesterday, you will recall that Gary Muirhead's question of the day was, what would be your go-to meal at a fish and chip shop? And I thought, that's a rich vein that we need to explore a bit further. So I've taken it and I've modified it. So this time, what is your go-to order if and when you have an Indian meal? Now, that depends whether you go there in person, whether you have it delivered, however you take your Indian food. What is your go-to? Now, I can tell you that Dan Cullen is out of this entirely. Never been to an Indian restaurant, so I don't know. Interesting. Now, when I met my wife, as she is now, but my girlfriend at the time, when I was 19, and at that time, I had never, ever, ever, ever had Indian food. And she basically told me Indian food was marvelous and that I should give it a try. So we made a deal between us. I would go for an Indian meal. I would eat curry if she went for pie and mash. Turns out I think I got the better end of the deal because I absolutely love Indian food. My wife, not so taken with pie and mash. So there you are. That's where we are. But what is your go-to? Now, what have we got? Ken Hatcher says, love Indian food, as do I. Steve Williamson is here. Morning, Steve. Steve is doing some fantastic stuff. I'm sure you're all following him already, but if you're not, you're missing out because he's doing some absolutely awesome stuff at the moment. Chris Ford, not into the Indian food. Don't particularly like it, he says. Okay, back to the house building thing. Jim Turner says if SME were building more affordable houses all over the country, the bigger firms would have to lower their prices and they'd go bust. Interesting. They can't afford to keep building if they aren't selling. All very true. But imagine how you're feeling now if you're living on a relatively new housing development that was built by one of the big seven, the Vistries and the Berkeley groups and people like that. And you kind of know in your heart of hearts you've probably paid over the odds. Would leave a bad taste, wouldn't it? Right, okay. So apparently Steve Williamson's order at an Indian is not entirely different to that of James Corden in Gavin and Stacey. Apparently he has rice, madras, 10 poppadoms, garlic naan, dips, sometimes a chicken shart for a starter. You mean business, don't you? And he's not even a big bloke. Not even a big bloke. Nigel Williams, lamb biryani or chicken tikka with mushroom rice. Now, personally, mine varies. My local is the Taste of Bengal, just down the road here. I go off at tangents. I do occasionally go for something a bit spicy, a vindaloo or something like that. But ultimately, I always seem to come back to the chicken tikka masala, which I realise is about as Indian as I am. And I'm off rice. I don't do rice anymore. I have a nasty habit of choking on rice. And I don't know whether that's because by the time I get my food, I wolf it down too quickly and it gets lodged. But I don't do rice anymore. So I'm a chicken tikka masala, plain naan bread to do the moppage. That's what I do. Peter says, what is a babri boona chicken and boiled rice or chicken tikka jalfrezi or madras? Again, going with the spice. That was some song about Danny O'Sullivan. Yeah, if anyone's in the WhatsApp group, you'll know that somebody has written and performed really rather well, I have to say, a rap about the disgraced recruitment agency, Danny O'Sullivan. If you haven't heard it, go and have a listen. Now, Gary Muirhead says, a chicken fowl. Now, is that a fowl or is that a fowl? because if it's a file, fuck me, that's hot. That is properly hot. So asbestos mouth. Speaking of asbestos, by the way, I'm actually speaking to a scientist. They've allowed me to interview a scientist this afternoon, all the way from the US of A. I'm going to be interviewing a scientist. Peter says all are done as hot as they can make them. Yes, I've always worried about that. Those people that go into an Indian restaurant and say, "What's the hottest thing you've got?" Oh, it'll be a file. Make it hotter. Because you just know that there's somebody back in the kitchen thinking, right, I'll show you. I will show you. Mike Wolf says, now, Mike, I'm fairly sure, Mike, you are vegetarian, right? Fairly sure you are. My local Indian is Khan's, and I always go for aloo gobi, matar paneer, a tarka dal, side dishes with a naan bread. I'm starving now. I have to say, I do like matar paneer. I also like tarka dal as well. Can sit there and give me a big old naan bread and some tarka dal. I'll be happy for hours. So if they are at this, will there be more agencies, companies caught up in this and scrutinised? Well, bearing in mind on that very subject, I know we've been talking about potential corruption and collusion and what have you among the house builders, but let's not forget that this is only a couple of months after a company was found guilty of bribing some Keltbury people at Battersea Power Station. We've reported on that. So that's two examples in a couple of months of recruitment companies doing some sketchy stuff. And apparently, not unusual. It's I saw a figure, somebody was talking online yesterday. You basically sign up to get your staff exclusively from that company, and you're in for a cut of 5, 6, 7, 8% even, which over the course of a project the size of a Battersea Power Station, well worth your while until plod arrives. Peter says, Babri Boon is a hot, flavourful Indian curry characterised by the use of fresh chilies, coriander, tomatoes and garlic. I'm on board. Dan says, I'm bloody hungry now, talking food. Yeah, it's a mistake to talk food this time of the morning, isn't it? Nigel says, so does this mean there could be a class action lawsuit against those builders identified in this investigation? Could the lawyers get their palms greased along this road? My guess is there would be potential for a class action. I guess the issue with it is that those obviously the anything that's gone on is spread originally across 8 companies. It's now 7 because 2 of them merged, but also spread not just the length and breadth of England, but it actually takes in Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales as well. So unless there is a very sharp lawyer out there that thinks could make my name on this, whether those people that have fallen foul of that system would ever likely get together, I have to question it. Luckily, I've got a chicken tikka masala burger for my breakfast while I'm watching the show. Now, Indian food for breakfast, yay or nay? I have to say, I'm definitely in the yay department. I do like myself a bit of secondhand Indian and Chinese, reheated Chinese the day after you've ordered it. Oh yeah, I'm all about that. And reheated pizza as well, so long as you do it properly. Now, Gary says, what about this new whistleblower? Yeah. So that new whistleblower, I'm kind of stood back. Because the guy has clearly got a lot to say for himself, and he seems to believe that he has a very strong case, and he may well have. My concern at the moment is that he seems to be spending a lot of his time on the internet, just basically baiting the industry or baiting individual people and individual companies, which I don't think is a particularly great idea. But I will tell you that yesterday he called out one particular member of the demolition fraternity and challenged them to a podcast duel here. I'm not not sure I want to do it. Hey, you never know. You never know. Dan, not keen on the idea of a chicken tikka masala burger. Steve, cold curry the next day. No, see, now that's where I draw the line. Can't do it cold. Can't do it cold. Has to be reheated. Crazy edits. That's Peter McKenna says, File isn't the hottest mark. Indian in Manchester does a Carolina Reaper Karai. Now, that's bloody hot. Took me a while to get through. Yeah, I bet it did. Mike Wolf says, definitely had Indian food for breakfast, lunch and dinner when we were traveling there. Leftovers, better for lunch than breakfast, though. Yeah, I kind of push it to mid-morning. Mid-morning, that. And Peter says, curry is better the day after. Do you know what is really, really good the day after? And I'm sure it's not my imagination. I'm sure there is some science to this. Shepherd's pie. My wife makes a mean shepherd's pie. Really does. And it's great. When I have it first, when it's fresh out the oven, bubbling, and it's fantastic. But the day after, I don't know what happens to it, but it seems to gain a bit. Nigel Williams says, when I get out of this job and off to the next, Dan, my mate, I'm going to get myself a breakfast baguette and send you a picture to see how hungry I can get you, lad. Looking forward to that. And yes, stews are better the day after. I've got to admit, come the winter, there is a rolling stew on our stove, sometimes 4 or 5 days, all from the same base. It's just topped up day after day. I know that's a big thing up in Scousland. I'm sure it's not peculiar, but we do that in this house, unquestionably. Mining Equipment Pro has just joined us over on Instagram as well. Good morning to you. And Dan says, thanks, Nigel. Yeah, well, make sure you circulate the photograph of this this beast of a baguette that you're planning to have, because I'd like to see that myself. I am just going to tidy up my screen because that's getting in my way. So it is time to actually crack on. So should we start with this? Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Mostly Diggers, our friend Garvin, has seen something of a spike in his traffic on his Instagram and what have you. And for good reason, because he comes up with ideas like this. And I've got to be honest, this is an idea I can absolutely get behind. I mentioned the fact that our whistleblower challenged one of those at whom he is blowing his whistle to a podcast duel here on this very channel. Mostly Diggers, Garvin has just said, is every industry just going to end up resolving things like those YouTuber boxing events? Seems that way sometimes. I would absolutely love to host that. You imagine whistleblower versus potential wrongdoer. I can't think of a better word. On with the gloves. Last man standing. Teddy Wixon has just said, what is the topic for the asbestos scientist from the US? Lots. There are lots and lots. I mean, I'll give you a very quick synopsis. One of the things that caught my attention about the guy is he was actually involved in analysing the materials after 9/11. So the toxic material of the collapsed buildings. So that was one of the things that got my attention. But obviously, yesterday, I don't know how aware all you guys are. There was some talk about the Trump administration rewriting the ban that Joe Biden's administration had put in place on asbestos. Apparently, they're not going to do that, but they have cut funding to their environment agency by about a third, which is obviously going to have an impact. So that is kind of the core of what I'm going to be talking about. But if you've got any other suggestions, Teddy, if you've got any particular asbestos-related bees in your bonnet that you would like me to address with an American scientist, hey, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. What do we got in the chat? I will press a button in a moment. Right, okay, that's where we are. Dan says, I used to love my mum's stew the next day or 3 days afterwards. Yeah, absolutely. What's the point of a korma? Don't knock it. I quite like a korma from time to time. Peter has sent your breakfast to the group, Mark. I'll have a look at that. Nigel says, I love a three-day-old stew, fresh dumplings and crusty rolls with real salted butter. Oh, now you're talking. Gary, Cornwall was historically a dish associated with royal courts and special occasions, showcasing expensive ingredients like saffron, rosewater, and nuts. As you will know, this is not something that Peter has readily to hand. This is the king of cut and paste doing his thing. Going back to Teddy Wixon, and this is one of the reasons that I'm looking forward to this discussion with this scientist this afternoon. This guy called Sean Fitzgerald, just so everybody knows. I'm looking forward to it, but there's a bit of me that's kind of dreading it because this is the absolute truth of asbestos. Teddy says, of the burning crew from 9/11, there's only one man left. He's a good friend of mine. Sad. Yeah. Now, I mean, one of the things I want to check, well, I do remember in not the immediate aftermath, but in the aftermath of 9/11, there was some concern that more people would ultimately die from exposure to asbestos in the air and other toxins when the buildings came down than were actually killed by the terrorist attack or terrorist atrocity itself. I don't know what the truth of that is, but I'm planning to find out. So we're not doing it live. I'm doing it recorded, and I'm doing it basically as a bit of a freelancing. I'm actually working for the Global Asbestos magazine, which I'm quite pleased about, I have to say. I'm looking forward to it. They've kind of given me a bit of free rein to go and interview people, and I'm looking forward to doing that. So watch this space. Anyway, I did promise you we were going to start the show 27 and a half minutes in. We're going trucking with the fine folks at Liebherr. This is how you keep a truck running. Peter McKenna, grossly underwhelmed by that. He said, truck? Pah, that's a dumper. We'll agree to disagree on that one. Dan, going back to the comment from Teddy Wixon about only one of the burning crew from 9/11 left. Wow, one person left. That's unbelievable. It's possibly still ongoing, the after effects. Very much so. Very, very much so. Bearing in mind that asbestosis, mesothelioma can take 20, 30, 40 years to show itself. And I wonder how many people have fallen ill as a result of 9/11 and not actually put two and two together. I wonder. Jonathan Duras has joined us as well. Morning, Jonathan. The show is now complete. Glad to see you here. Steve Williamson says, cool video, cool truck. I've been behind the wheels of one of those, and it's really quite nice. They're a decent ADT, says Peter. A bit better than Rockback. Yeah, I think I'd probably agree with that. probably agree with that. Mike Wolf says, regarding 9/11, someone I know is a New York City firefighter who was there during the attack and who assisted in the cleanup. He has suffered health issues since, as have many of his colleagues. Yeah. I know there was a big protest and campaign and initiative. They had the comedian and late night TV presenter Jon Stewart as kind of their figurehead, but basically trying to get health cover and health assistance for the first responders. Not entirely sure where that is. Again, I'll check that with my new friend Sean Fitzgerald this afternoon. Steve says a lot better than the Rock back. Steve, they're a fellow Scot. Surely you should be on board with Rockback. Gary says a poor man's Volvo. It is still the benchmark. Just incidentally, going back to Mike Wolf's comment about New York City firefighters, has anyone heard the tale of Steve Buscemi? You know, the actor Steve Buscemi? Boardwalk Empire, Reservoir Dogs, and all of those good things. Absolutely fantastic actor. He had, before he found fame as an actor, he was a firefighter in New York City, and in the immediate aftermath of the 9/11 atrocity, he basically went back to his old firehouse and volunteered and basically picked up where he left off. That's a proper fellow, that, right? Steve Buscemi, not just a fine actor. Nigel Williams says, asbestos, we all have our views, and I'm afraid to say, whilst I understand the large quantities are large pieces being a hazard, but I know so many companies struggling with spoil and piles of materials for crushing and screening that have sub 2% contamination, and they're struggling to do anything with them due to the cost of disposal, and the knock-on effect is a stagnation of projects and spiralling costs of projects. The issue you've got, Nigel, and I this is where I take the opposing stance on this. I got to know a lady called Mavis Nye, who was an asbestos and mesothelioma campaigner. And her husband had died of asbestos exposure. And yes, she indeed herself, ultimately, about a year ago now, died of asbestos exposure. And her exposure was just washing his clothes. He would come home with asbestos in his overalls. She would bung them in the washing machine. She'd get the fibres. She died. So I take your point. I do take your point. But one fibre is enough. Dan Cullen says, you missed my comment on the truck. Did I? Do you mean this one? I think that's a Scania unit hauling the road planer, had only 150,000 miles on it since 2016. She looked like new. Is that the one you were talking about? Sorry if I missed that. And Mike Wolf says, yes, Buscemi did assist in the 9/11 cleanup. See, I don't make these things up, you know. Yeah, I think we're up to speed there. So let's have a bit of this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Now, the film I'm about to play you is about 5 minutes long, and although all of the talking is by and large in English, there's some French accents, but stick with it, because this is how you harness technology to rebuild an entire valley.
Where the Alps meet the Mediterranean breeze lies the Roya Valley, shaped by nature and at times tested by it. Nearly 5 years ago, floods devastated this land, destroying roads, homes, and isolating entire communities. Rebuilding wasn't just urgent, it became a mission. This is a story of resilience, of innovation, and of precision. Because getting it right means protecting this valley from future disasters. And a story of how people and technology are working together to build back stronger, safer, and smarter.
For example, over there, just behind, there is a house that collapsed when the water came into the first floor of the pink house, so they evacuated everyone.
4 years ago, I was working in Monaco. One October evening, there was that famous storm Alex. The next day, it was broadcast worldwide on TV.
Everything begins on Friday at noon. But in just a few hours, 500 millimeters of rainfall swelled the rivers of the Vesuvio and Roya valleys.
We didn't yet know how it was going to unfold today. Then the company started gradually providing resources to help the population of Roya restore temporary access to get the first vehicles through for rescue services, because during the first month there were a lot of helicopters. We were really mobilized for Roya to help the people.
The first job was draining the lake, and then there were rock placements to maintain the banks, and at that moment I started to get to know the GPS on the excavators. I saw the usefulness of this equipment.
In total, there almost 5 kilometers of riprap in the Roya. So here we go down 5 meters deep to really anchor the first rows of riprap as deep as possible. We spread the blocks over a certain width so that the water can never, in case of flooding, go under the riprap. The guidance system is a system that is really fast in terms of efficiency.
Well, it was mainly the precision of the work, simplifying it for the operator to be able to work properly and to place the rocks right where they're supposed to be.
The great thing about the GPS system is its ability to handle deep and complex earthworks, which are highly dangerous, especially when walking in water with risks like landslides. What's incredible about GPS technology today is that it eliminates the need for people on the ground, keeping them safe. Tasks like placing geotextiles or drainage holes can be done directly from the machine with precise levels for each block. No need for anyone to go down, mark or stake. It greatly enhances worker safety.
An excavator operator and a person on the bank were enough to do the job.
For me, my favorite feature is the ability to measure and create points. It lets me adapt to site changes, draw level lines and measure quickly. For example, before laying block, the team radios me to ask how much geotextile do we need, and I can calculate it in seconds. I set a point as the top and bottom of the embankment, measure directly and know I need 8 meters. The team brings exactly that. As for support, I rarely need it. The machine runs flawlessly with no connection issues or other problems. The responsiveness is impressive, and most issues are addressed within 10 minutes, or they promise a callback in half an hour and resolve it right away. For example, if a machine breaks down at 9, it's fixed by 10. This is crucial for us, especially on sites like this where machines must keep running without interruption. The most rewarding part is the gratitude from the people of the Roya. Since online, after the tragedy of Storm Alex, they lost their smiles, but over time, we helped restore their hope and confidence through our work.
There will certainly be less damage because all the work that has been done was designed with resilience to a future catastrophe.
I hope to keep moving in this direction, because the rock armoring we've done will last a lifetime, and I'm proud of that. I'm also proud to have worked on the Alex storm recovery alongside my brother Julian, who dedicated 5 years of his life to the Roya. It's something I deeply value.
No idea why that didn't just finish on its own, but thank you very much indeed for that. Good spotting of the equipment there, but everybody. Kabelko, says Peter, what a fantastic machine. Sod all the other marks. Nice. Kabelko, says Dan, have you heard about the big one down under? The last time I think I told you I've all but given up hope on that. And the last email I sent went unanswered. I have a funny feeling that the marketing lady that I was dealing with is no longer with Kabelko Australia. I don't know that for a fact, but I've never had silence before. So either I've pissed her off or she's left. I don't know. So I think that is a dead duck now. And yeah, Dan spotted the fact there was a Liebherr ADT. Gary Muirhead says, just heard this morning that your friend, he's using that term advisedly, your friend Mr. Trump is visiting Scotland. It means we're not allowed to transport any turbine parts to site because there's no police available. I mean, he's not a fan of wind turbines anyway because it kills all the eagles. See, there's great heaps. No, listen, Gary, you work with this, I'm sure, every day. You are stepping over great piles of dead eagles at the base of wind turbines because, as Mr. Trump says, they are deadly. Yeah. Should he be coming to Scotland? Should he be coming to this country at all? Really? Convicted felon? Do the rules not apply? Just saying. Gary says this means there'll be no delivery for 2 weeks. Doesn't that make sense, eh? We're trying. In fact, when you think about it, there is a certain irony to this. He is a guy who is a climate change denier, clearly not a fan of wind turbines and all that they bring. And his arrival will put back the construction and delivery of wind turbines. It's almost like he's staging a one-man, orange-faced protest all on his own. Garver says, plenty of hot air at least. Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? They're eating the cats. They're eating the dogs. Fuck off. Wolfie has just joined us. Yeah, we see. I'm not always a fan of our American. Well, I'm not a huge fan of the guy at the top of America. Everybody else, our friend Teddy Wixon seems like a splendid fella. Our friend Wolfie, splendid fella as well. Does that mean Gary gets to go on holiday? Probably not. Probably not. Have you got another holiday coming up, Gary? I know you've already been away, but is there more planned? I think we need to know. Right, okay, we've rebuilt a valley. The video I'm about to show you features the fine folks at Hyundai, and they believe that the machine I'm about to show you is the perfect production machine. I'll let you judge immediately after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Yeah, Peter's just said, from what I can gather, Gary, they wouldn't issue the permits for the truck while Trump was in the country due to security risks. Yeah. Dan says, question is, are wind turbines economical friendly? I think over the long term they certainly are. I think that's proven, isn't it? I just assumed that was accepted wisdom. I don't know. Anyway, as I say, Hyundai reckon that this machine, this wheel loader, is the perfect production machine. Are they telling the truth? You be the judge. You know these things better than I do. Here we go. Perfect production machine? Let us have your thoughts. Peter says, wind energy is free down and it makes us less reliant on imported fuels. I agree 100%. Gary, now, there's two things here. Gary says, yes, there's plenty of dead eagles everywhere. Mind you, they make good eating. Now, a couple of things. Can you eat eagle? I realise from a moral and probably a legal standpoint, but can you? Is there much meat on an eagle? Deep fried eagle? I don't know. Jim says it's proven they aren't environmentally friendly when all the CO2 generated in the construction is factored in. But over a lifetime of 25, 30 years, is that true? I'm interested to know. I think steel and concrete and replaceable every 25 years, I believe so, in my opinion. I believe they're not as green as they're made out to be. Oh, interesting. Mostly diggers. I didn't even... Sorry, Garvin, I didn't even know you were away. He's leaving Oslo today, but happened to see his first hydrogen-powered Lugong loader in the wild on a site. Looking forward to seeing the video in that case. Of all the places in the world it was likely to be, Oslo would be... Yeah, I'd have put money on that. I would absolutely put money on that. Jonathan Duras has said a popular wheel loader from Hyundai City Demolition are using one at the moment in Wolverhampton. Fair play to City Demolition. Haven't bumped into those guys for quite some time. Gary says he's off to Benidorm in September for 10 days, and even the Outlaws are coming too. Good luck with that. Listen, I know Benidorm gets a bit of a bad press, but I'm quite possibly because of the TV show. I've always had a great time in Benidorm. Absolutely loved it. We would need imported fuel if we still mine. We wouldn't need imported fuel if we still mine and burned our own coal, says Jim. That is certainly the truth. And Ground Max have just joined us over on Instagram. Good morning. You're kind of catching the tail end of the show, but we've still got more to show you, including a tiny robot with a big brain. In a second. Going back to Mr. Trump and the delivery of wind turbine parts. Peter, I think it's more likely there's no coppers available to police escort them to site. I think that's probably the case. Yeah, let's take that away because I'm just going to play the. Oh, hang on a minute. Let's go back to Garvin. Apparently, it's not a hydrogen-powered Lugong loader. It's an electric-powered Lugong loader, the 856 HE. Still good. Still good for a video. I'm sure you had the phone now. The video I'm about to show you is called Tiny Robot, Big Brain. That's all you need to know.
What you're looking at is not a toy, even though it kind of looks like one. This is our mini test unit, our crash test dummy for AI. It's how we teach our software to drive, lift, think, and not run over anyone. We're using it to train the next generation of vehicle intelligence. It's small, but it's got big brain energy. This little beast is helping us unlock autonomous features, smarter hydraulics, and operator-friendly controls for full-size off-highway equipment. Heavy tech is building the future, and like all genius things, it started in a garage with a tiny robot that sometimes forgets where it's going.
Yeah, that's how they're proving the tech. Now, Jonathan Duras. Now, I do try wherever possible to take the environmental stance on these things, but I have to admit, I'm kind of with Jonathan on this. We shut all our coal mines too early, but particularly bearing in mind that we shut the coal mines for a variety of reasons, and certainly shut our power stations or our fossil fuel power stations to comply with rules and regulations from the EU, the same EU that we're no longer a part of. Yeah. Now, going back to bird death and piles of dead eagles about the place, Peter says wind turbines account for a tiny fraction of bird deaths, less than 0.02% in the grand scheme of human-related causes. Cats, cars, and windows kill a damn sight more. Yes, they do. Is Mr. Trump going to outlaw cats and windows? Don't, for fuck's sake, don't anyone suggest it to him, because it's the sort of thing he would do. Dan says... I'm going to have to translate this. For fuck's sake, more AI bullshit. Oh my God, no one will be working in future. Robots will take over. Yeah. But, if be honest, if I could train a robot to sit here and do this while I was off fishing, might not be the same for you, but I'd be having a good time. Peter says, Gary, they could technically escort them using approved escort companies, but the police charge for their services, so that's a technicality. The Heavy Transport Association is attempting to change that, apparently. Gary says the newer turbines are more efficient, so you don't need to build as many, more power from a lot less of them. Interesting. Wolfie says at one point they wanted to rip the entire top off a local mountain just so they could put up the wind turbines. That fell through because the community was not happy. Thank goodness. Yeah, I'm keen on the outcome of wind turbines. Not keen on how they look. Not a problem with the offshore ones, particularly when you're. Andy, I'll come to you in just a second because you just made me chuckle. If anyone's ever flown over, our friend Garvin is in Oslo at the moment. You fly over bits of Scandinavia and you see the offshore wind farms. They look fantastic, and they're not really interrupting anyone. You know, they're just offshore lines and lines of windmills doing their thing. I think they look awesome. They look really futuristic. Not so sure on land. And Andy Thornton, who wins the comment of the day with this: Trump will never ban cats. He'd have to get rid of the one that sleeps on his head. Yes, that shredded wheat. How long do you reckon? How long does it take him to knit that every single morning? I actually think there's more balls than hair now, and yet he manages to. He manages to macrame the tiny little bit, the dear little bit of hair he's got left to cover his dome. Incredible. Peter says, modern turbines come with smart controls to optimize blade pitch, that's rotation and direction, and output in real time. Some can shut down automatically when birds approach or during extreme wind. Yeah, I'm sure we've all seen the videos of extreme wind causing them to basically explode. Not so good, although probably keeps Gary in work. Anyway, people, I do have a morning monologue for you today, which I shall I'll be along just a moment, because that's it for the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like into the House of Cards, which is the title of today's morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe, look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues, and I hope to see you again very soon. And I'll be able to tell you about my chat with the scientist tomorrow at some point. If you have the time and the inclination, however, I will be back in just a moment after this. The Great Pyramid of Giza is the only one of the original 7 wonders of the ancient world still standing. Although there is great speculation about how it was built and by whom, the pyramid stands as a testament to the skill of those that erected it. For millennia, that pyramid has stood sentinel. It's seen empires rise and fall, countless sunrises and sunsets, and through it all, it has remained resilient. And for good reason. Regardless whether you believe it was built by thousands of slaves or by alien beings from another galaxy, the Great Pyramid of Giza is the blueprint for strong, stable construction. It is broadest and therefore strongest at its base, spreading and carrying the load for the levels above that slowly diminish in size until it reaches its peak, 137 meters above. 4,500 years after it was built, it stands strong to this very day. Despite advances in machinery, methods, and materials, that same principle of strongest at the base still guides modern construction practices. In fact, it actually guides the composition of the industry and the makeup of each individual project. Like the Great Pyramid, our industry is one of many layers, all held together by a keystone. That keystone is often a major company or a tier 1 contractor. Below them and supporting them are layer upon layer of subcontractors and specialists, each playing their part to ensure that each project remains upright. Even in a relatively small niche like demolition, there are layers of expertise and responsibility. There are those that specialise in asbestos removal, soft strip, temporary works and facade retention, and structural demolition. Like the huge blocks that make up the Great Pyramid, or like the military phalanx of ancient Greece, each layer and each skill is dependent upon those above, beside, and below them. When everything works as it should, the creation of a new building is a strong, stable, and well-rehearsed process. When it doesn't, however, that Great Pyramid more closely resembles a house of cards, frail and prone to collapse, the whole thing at the mercy of its weakest link. In theory, the composition of the construction industry is the ultimate protection against jack of all trades, master of none. Each subcontractor, each specialist, each layer in that industry pyramid brings its own unique set of skills and strengths. In practice, however, things are rather different. And while I don't want to mix my metaphors, one single issue can turn the house of cards into a domino effect, each one toppling the next. At the most simplistic level, this might manifest itself as a delay. One subcontractor or specialist overruns, and that has a knock-on effect on the next specialist in line. It might be only a day or a week, but it can trigger a series of further delays that can seriously jeopardize a project deadline. A demolition contractor has a problem with his high-reach excavator, and the machine is out of action for a few days while a replacement machine or a replacement part is delivered. As a result, the piling contractor is now twiddling his thumbs, unable to begin because there's still a building in the way. Because of issues further up the chain, a steel worker can't take delivery of steel as there's nowhere to store it. By the time the steel is reordered, there could be problems with supply. And if the steel shifts back, so does every other skill that depends upon it. And so it goes on. Yet, in the grand scheme of things, that's merely a hiccup, a tiny fly in an otherwise unspoiled ointment. Where the house of cards begins to tremble, however, is when the issue of finance rears its head. The Tier 1 contractor at the top of the heap is slow in paying one of its subbies. That subby is then unable to pay the specialist below them, who in turn is unable to pay the subby below them. By the time this domino effect trickles down to the one-man band, painter and decorator on the bottom rung of the project ladder, he can't afford the materials required to do the job. And worse still, he's unable to feed his wife and family, pay his mortgage, put diesel in his car. A seemingly minor glitch at the very top of the project becomes a company-killing catastrophe at the bottom. And that's just when payment is delayed. What about when it's not forthcoming at all? What about when one of the cards propping up the house fails and folds? When it's a mid-ranking contractor or a subby that's... Let me do that bit again. When it's a mid-ranking contractor or subby that succumbs, it can have a significant impact upon those companies below them in the pecking order. But when it's a major contractor, a Carillion or an ISG, for example, it can bring the entire house of cards crashing down. Those near the top will take a damaging fall. Those at the bottom will be buried. At its strongest, the demolition and construction industry is like the Great Pyramid of Giza, resilient even if it is built on shifting sands. But at its weakest, the industry pyramid is a gigantic game of Jenga. And if one piece is removed, the whole thing comes crashing down. Almost made it all the way through without a glitch there. Almost. I've only been doing this for 5.5 years. Let's have a look. What we got here. Okay, going back to wind turbines. There's offshore ones in UK, off the Essex coast. There are indeed. Wolfie is off to work. Have a good day, my friend. Gary says the land that were built these on is perfect for wind turbines. The ground is just peat and fit for nothing else. I quite like falling over on peat, though. Have you done that? Have you tried that, Gary? Have you tried falling face first into peat? Painless and quite good fun. Moist, but quite good fun. Mike Wolf says, I have a photo of my grandfather sitting on a camel in front of the Great Pyramid alongside his mates. It was taken in 1916 when he was there with the British Army. It's amazing to think that was 109 years ago. Hardly any time compared to the 4,000 years or so since the pyramids were built. Yeah. And I saw something and I wish I'd kept it. I saw something, they're just talking about the passage of time. Nothing to do with the pyramids whatsoever. I'm fairly sure it was a photograph of Duran Duran, around about the time that they came into the public spotlight with Planet Earth and Girls on Film and stuff. And according to the caption, and I've not done the maths, so I'm just going to take the word of the meme for it, apparently that photograph was taken closer to the Victorian age than it was to the present day. How is that right? Is that right? When did the Victorian age end? I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, There we are. So yes, House of Cards. Think about, I mean, I mentioned the ISG and Carillion. Something goes wrong there and the whole thing comes crashing down. And we still do it that way. Now listen, I do think the way that we divide skills and specialisms and stuff, I think that's absolutely right. I think that does overcome the idea of jack of all trades and master of none. But the knock-on effect, if something goes tits up, and something as very, really quite straightforward as a delay, can then have a trickle effect. Years ago, trying to remember the name of the place, I was up in the northeast of England. Something Scotch Corner, that's the word I was looking for. Scotch Corner. They were rebuilding a part of the I think it was an A road. Up at Scotch Corner, and they'd done, this is sort of pre-technology, so I think they literally had people stood there with stopwatches and tick boxes and stuff. But they'd done a study on the fact that there was quite a lot of traffic delays there. And the basic math was, if you're driving along at 70, 75, 80 miles an hour, I realise what the speed limit is, but if you're doing that and you apply your brakes for a second, the person behind you will apply their brakes for 3 seconds. The person behind them will apply their brakes for somewhere around about 8, 9 seconds. And that has basically a domino effect right the way back. So somebody applying their brakes here for a second, by the time you go back 20 or 30 cars, that car is now stopped. It's actually come to a complete halt. That's the knock-on effect. And I would say the same here. If, I mean, the example I gave, if a high-reach machine goes down, they're waiting for a part or waiting for a replacement machine, they've lost a day, 2 days, possibly a week. That pushes the piling contractor back. Piling contractor pushes the steel company back, but doesn't push them back. Demolition might push the piling back a week, but by the piling contractor has basically reconfigured everything, they might be going back 10 days. By the time the steel erectors arrive, they're back a fortnight, maybe 3 weeks. By the time, and so it goes on. Let's have a look. It's a great heat product. Peat, we burn it at home as turf. And quickly picking up on his spelling of the word Pete is Peter. Why would you burn me down? I thought we were friends. I'm sure you are. Dan says the Victorians were some engineers. Yeah, I'm sure I've told you this before. I mean, I'm a huge admirer of the London Underground, which I do think is a great testament to the ingenuity and the engineering prowess of the Victorians. But you know, when they started to work on the Channel Tunnel as it is today, late 1980s, they basically used a tunnel that had already been started in the Victorian times, and I think it went about 1.5 miles under the English Channel. So, you know, I would imagine sort of hand dug and so on down the line. And the only reason that they didn't see it through to fruition was because nobody could figure out a way in which they could collapse a tunnel if the Frenchies decided to invade. They wanted some sort of way of, you know, from London probably, press a button and the whole thing will collapse and stop Frenchie coming through and improving our food or something. I don't know. Whatever the circumstances were, that was why it was done. But yeah, the Victorian engineers had already started work on the Channel Tunnel, and it took another 60, 70 years before the fine folks of the Channel Tunnel organisation said, we'll see that through. Never mind collapsing it on our French cousins. Let's have a look. See it everywhere on motorway, people braking for no bloody reason. The problem is, I think, because the roads are now so busy and so packed with traffic, I think everyone is driving defensively. I think I do find myself, I drive my car, but I'm also kind of driving the car in front and the car to one side of me, because I'm very conscious of what they're doing. I mean, the number of times you're driving along a motorway, you know, within the speed limit, and somebody does something really bloody stupid, and you have to account for that. And often that accounting for it means you tap the brakes, and if you tap the brakes, matey's got to stamp on the brakes. And if he stamps on the brakes, somebody 10, 15 cars back is now at a standstill, looking at the motorway thinking, why have I stopped? There's nothing here. Now you know. It was my fault. All of it was my fault. These big companies sneeze and we all catch a cold. Yeah. And therein lies the issue. And it's, as I say, it's the same on a project basis, but it's also the same on an industry basis. You look at the after effects of Carillion going down, you look at the after effects of ISG going down, and all the others that we've lost in the interim period. It has a knock-on effect. It is literally a domino effect. And as I said, your one-man band painter and decorator at the bottom of the ladder, will he get paid? Will he get to pay his mortgage? Will he get to put food on the table? Major question mark, I would say. Major question mark. Anyway, people, I did say yesterday I was planning to work on kind of getting ideas above my station somewhat, and I'm certainly not the orator that he was. I had an idea of doing my take on the I Have a Dream speech from Martin Luther King, but applied to demolition and construction. I did a bit of work on it yesterday. It's nearly there. I may even have that for you tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. Peter says people complain about trucks overtaking and reckon trucks should be limited to lane 1 on all motorways, yet cars sit in lane 1 doing 50 miles an hour. It's all very true. All very true. The one thing I would say about the truckers, particularly when you find yourself, I'm just trying to think. There's a place in Kent that I used to go to a lot, and I can't remember the name of the place, Rootham or thereabouts. And there's a really long, steep hill there. And obviously, some of the trucks struggled to get up there. And the way that they kind of overtake and then slip back in, I think they're way more considerate than most car drivers, in my humble experience. Dan says, I also see lorries passing cars at 45 to 50 miles an hour. These clowns need re-evaluate motorway driving. Dominoes is a wonderful thing, shows you how it works. Indeed it does. Get too big too soon, fall hard. Yeah, absolutely. I've had this conversation with a lot of demolition companies, and I'm sure this is not peculiar to demolition. But when you're a relatively small demolition company, a startup, maybe it's you and 2 or 3 other people, you've got a couple of machines, and maybe you're running 1, 2, 3 jobs. So the managing director, who, it was his brainwave to start the thing in the first place, he can get around every site in a day sometimes over a course of 2 days, really have his fingers on the pulse and know exactly what is going on. He can keep an eye on the staff, keep an eye on productivity, keep an eye on the safety and the health and everything else. When you get a bit bigger, that becomes a bit harder. And by the time you've got 10, 12, 15 projects on the go, it basically becomes beyond the managing director to be able to keep an eye on all of those, at which point you delegate that responsibility to somebody else. And regardless of how much you're paying them, does that person necessarily care as much as you do as the company founder? So that, as a result, that transition from successful small to even more successful medium, and then successful medium up to large, fraught with danger, I would say. Crazy edits. Mark, me and a lad that own a training company are going to start doing a podcast. YouTube videos coming soon. Looking forward to it. Let us know when you begin, Peter. More than happy to shout that from the rooftops. Andy Thornton says delegation has to come with policy. It does, but and I realise it's a weird analogy to draw. But my wife for a number of years ran a cafe in a shopping centre, and it was her and one of her oldest and dearest friends, went to school together, had children together. Not literally had children together, because that's not how the science works. But so, they're very, very close. And the two of them lived and breathed that cafe. They employed some of our children and some of her friends' children as well. And they were, to a large degree, they had the same belief and the same passion. But as the thing got busier and they started to employ other people, that's when you started to see the cracks. People would, you're down for working on a Sunday morning. Oh, I can't do that. Or Sunday morning would roll around and they just wouldn't turn up. And you just gradually see like a dissipation of passion and dedication and determination as you get further and further away from the core. Well, back to pyramids again. The keystone is fine and is strong, but yeah. It's unbelievable how cautious truck operators are. Is mad. Seen 3 near misses on the M25 last week involving trucks and dumbass car drivers. Why are some clowns afraid to pass trucks? I don't know. If you can't pass, don't drive in a motorway. I think that's fair comment. People, I need to. Do you know this is how seriously I'm taking today's interview. I'm even going to change. I'm going to put a shirt on because I don't know. It feels sciencey. I don't think I've ever interviewed a scientist before. I'm not sure how they roll. I mean, he might turn out to be an absolute scruff bag. I doubt it, but yeah, I'm putting a shirt on for this. May even drop the hat. So expect the glare on the noggin. But yeah, I'm taking it very, very seriously. I'll tell you more about it tomorrow. But until then, everybody, have a fine and splendid day. Look after yourselves. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Yeah, that's it. That's all I've got to say. Till tomorrow. Have a good one. All the best.